Hey everyone, and welcome to today's Explainer. I am genuinely so thrilled to have you here because we're about to journey back in time to explore an absolutely legendary historical epic. Today, we are uncovering the age of the Guptas, a period spanning roughly 2 centuries that kicked off in the early 4th century CE. If you're a fan of history that's packed with not just conquering kings, but staggering leaps in human intellect, well, you are in exactly the right place.
But before we really start unpacking the timeline, let's stop and ask a pretty fundamental question. What actually makes an era a golden age? I mean, think about it for a second. Is it just kings sitting on massive piles of gold? Well, okay, wealth helps for sure, but a true golden age involves massive leaps in science, medicine, literature, and culture. It's an era where society experiences such profound progress that it leaves a permanent mark on human civilization. And as we're going to see, the Gupta Empire didn't just meet this definition, they completely defined it.
Now, geographically speaking, the Gupta Empire was just staggering. It eventually swallowed up nearly the entire northern chunk of India. But how did they sustain such immense growth? Well, the crucial point here is that their geography gave them a massive head start. They had access to incredibly fertile land in places like eastern UP and Bihar, and critically, rich iron ore deposits right in central India. These material advantages gave them the literal tools and the food security needed to build something truly extraordinary.
So here is our roadmap for today. 1. The Golden Age defined. 2. Kings of the Gupta era. 3. Governing a vast empire. 4. Pioneers of ancient science. 5. Ancient hubs of learning. And 6. A cultural renaissance. Let's just dive right into it.
Section 1. The Golden Age defined. Reconstructing the past.
So you might be wondering, how do historians actually know all these hyper-specific details about an empire from way back in the 4th century? Well, we rely heavily on 2 fascinating but totally different primary sources. And honestly, this brilliantly illustrates how history is pieced together. On one side, we have the accounts of Fa-hien. He was a Chinese pilgrim who visited India on a religious mission. What's amazing about Fa-hien is his completely unbiased outsider perspective. He wrote down that the population was incredibly wealthy, people were generally peaceful, and interestingly, the penal code was amazingly mild. I mean, most offenses were just punished with a simple fine. Now, contrast that with the Allahabad pillar inscription. This is the ultimate insider's document. Composed by Harisena, the court poet, it's essentially an ancient PR monument, inscribed on a pillar, praising the military genius of the Gupta kings, wiping away their enemies, and documenting their fast conquests. Combining the peaceful observations of Fa-hien with the military records of the Allahabad pillar gives us this beautifully well-rounded picture of the era.
Section 2. Kings of the Gupta era. The architects of peace.
You know, staggering cultural and scientific achievements, they absolutely require a solid foundation of political stability. You literally can't have a renaissance if you're constantly fighting just to survive. This empire was really built on the backs of 3 foundational rulers. In the early 4th century CE, Chandragupta I kicks things off by declaring independence and taking the grand title King of Kings. Then, right in the mid-4th century, his son Samudragupta takes the throne and launches massive military campaigns. Finally, by the late 4th century, Chandragupta II steps in and strategically annexes the Western territories.
And what's truly fascinating here is comparing the vastly different strategies of those last 2 kings. Samudragupta was just a sheer force of military nature. He's often called the Napoleon of India. He led this daring 3,000-mile campaign through dense forests right into the Deccan Plateau, forcing rulers to submit to his authority. But then you look at his successor, Chandragupta II, who was also known as Vikramaditya, and he was a total master of diplomacy and economics. Instead of just relying on brute force, he used strategic matrimonial alliances, marrying into powerful families. Even smarter, he specifically conquered Western territories to gain access to highly lucrative seaports, which basically opened up direct seaborne commerce with Europe through Egypt. Such a brilliant economic strategy.
And, well, all that brilliant economic strategy resulted in this. These are authentic gold coins from the Gupta period. They issued a huge variety of them, actually. On a lot of these, you'll spot Lakshmi, the goddess of prosperity, literally stamped onto the currency, which is just a perfect symbol for an era of massive material wealth. The kings also used these coins to sort of project their personal brand. You know, Chandragupta II even had himself depicted slaying a lion to show off his valor.
Section 3. Governing a vast empire. Decentralized power.
So how do you govern a territory this incredibly vast and wealthy without it immediately falling apart into rebellion?
The secret was a highly effective, decentralized administrative structure. The Guptas didn't even try to micromanage everything from the capital. At the very top, sure, you had the king, adopting grand titles like Paramabhataraka. But below him, the empire was cleanly divided into provinces called Buktis, which were managed by governors. Those were then further divided into districts called Vishayas, and right down at the grassroots, village administration was actually managed by a local headman and village elders. By letting locals have a real say in their own day-to-day affairs, the Guptas maintained immense loyalty and stability across thousands of miles.
Section 4. Pioneers of Ancient Science, Mind-Blowing Reveals.
It was exactly that stability we just talked about that allowed scholars like Aryabhata to really thrive. I mean, get this. Centuries before Europeans accepted it, he proposed that the Earth rotates on its axis around the sun. No way, right? He correctly explained the actual astronomical causes of solar and lunar eclipses, tossing aside the old mythological explanations. He calculated the exact value of pi as 3.4116. He established rules for the area of a triangle, and he was fully acquainted with the decimal system and the entire concept of zero. The foundational math we literally use every single day to build modern society was being perfected right here in the Gupta era.
And it wasn't just math either. It was medicine too. The medical compendiums of scholars like Sushruta became the absolute bedrock of Gupta healthcare. Today, Sushruta is actually known as the father of plastic surgery. Using texts dating all the way back to around 600 BCE that became foundational in this period, doctors carried out highly sophisticated reconstructive procedures, like literally rebuilding noses using cheek flaps. Sushruta even crafted 121 precise surgical instruments, 101 blunt and 20 sharp. This wasn't primitive medicine, guys. This was a fully evolved, highly skilled surgical system.
Section 5. Ancient Hubs of Learning. The Ancient Ivy League.
So how do you actually produce genius-level minds like Aryabhata? Well, you need an unparalleled educational infrastructure. 10,000. That is the staggering number of students and teachers who gathered at the absolute pinnacle of Gupta education. And they weren't just from India. Scholars traveled from China, Japan, Korea, Tibet, and all over Southeast Asia just for the chance to study here.
And where exactly were they gathering? At the renowned Nalanda University, which we can still marvel at through its surviving ruins today. Nalanda wasn't just your average school, okay? It was an elite postgraduate institution. It was so prestigious that students had to take a rigorous entrance exam, and historical records show it had a ruthless 20% pass rate. Only the most brilliant minds got in. And once they were inside, they had access to massive multi-story brick libraries with sweeping names like the Ocean of Jewels, studying everything from Vedic texts to logic, grammar, and medicine.
Section 6. A Cultural Renaissance, Enduring Masterpieces.
When you have a highly educated, peaceful, and wealthy society, it eventually pours its soul into art. The Vishnu Temple at Deogarh is a perfect physical testament to this. Before the Guptas, most shrines were built from perishable materials, like wood, which, simply didn't survive the elements. But the Guptas, they pioneered a massive shift to solid stone and brick, utilizing a grand architectural style known as Nagara. This temple is covered in intricate carvings of Hindu deities, proving that they weren't just building structures, they were crafting permanent, stone testaments to their devotion and their artistry.
But their art wasn't just in stone. It was in words. During this period, Sanskrit actually replaced Prakrit as the language of administration and the learned. And the absolute shining star of this literary explosion, that would be Kalidasa. Historians often compare him to Shakespeare. Kalidasa's romantic plays and epic poetry just completely thrived under the patronage of the Gupta court. His works are so profoundly human and so beautifully crafted that they've been translated into countless languages across the world, maintaining their power over a millennia later.
Which brings us to our final thought today. The Gupta era isn't just, dusty history. So the next time you use the decimal system or calculate the area of a space using pi, read a piece of classic dramatic literature, or marvel at modern medical advancements, ask yourself, how much of that traces back to this single brilliant pocket of history? The Golden Age of India didn't just elevate the Guptas, it elevated human knowledge forever. Thank you so much for joining me on this explainer today. Keep learning, and I'll catch you next time.